Welcome to Aspen Leading Edge. This is Patty Roberts from St. Mary's University School of Law. And this morning I have with me Steve Foritano. He is a practitioner in residence and director of the first-year Trial Practicum Program at Drake University School of Law that is located in Des Moines, Iowa. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm very excited to learn more about the first-year Trial Practicum program that you have. But before that, why don't you tell us a little bit about what brought you to Drake University School of Law in the first place?
Sure. I went to University of Iowa Law School originally, did an internship with the Iowa Attorney General's office in Des Moines, and they eventually hired me. But I wanted to do trial work. And so eventually I went to the Polk County Attorney's Office, which is the largest prosecutor's office in the state of Iowa, located here in Des Moines. So while I was there, I developed a relationship with Drake Law School and the internship program that they had, because we had a lot of interns in our office, and I wound up supervising those interns. As a result of that, I wound up teaching trial advocacy and also coaching one of the mock trial teams for a long time. And obviously Drake is located in Des Moines, so it was very convenient and handy for me to be associated with Drake Law School. And it's always been a great experience for me to be part of the law school. I retired about 2015 and started teaching a lot more once I retired. So it's been, and taken on a lot more other responsibilities, if you will. But it's been a great experience for me, and Drake has a great partnership with the local prosecutor's offices here, as well as a number of other entities. And we try to make the most of the fact that they're located here in the capital city.
Well, can you tell those of us who may be less familiar with Drake a little bit more about the law school?
Sure. Yeah, it's located in Des Moines, and that is the capital city, the largest city in Iowa. We have what I used to like to say is that there's all the advantages that big cities have, but none of the real problems. And so it's a great place to live, great place to raise a family, great place to go to school. Drake has about, I'd say probably about 300 students, and they're very active in the community, and especially in Des Moines. Because of that, there's a large number of Drake graduates that are judges, lawmakers, governor's office, a number of Supreme Court, all of those different branches and different organizations have a huge number of Drake alumni. And fortunately for us, most of those individuals have a great relationship with Drake. And so it's a very, very supportive atmosphere. It's a very welcoming city, and it's a very good place to work. And there's a huge emphasis on congeniality, so that there is a practice among the lawyers that you're going to see that lawyer over and over. So there's that friendship that develops, and I think we get a lot done as a result of that. There isn't the contentious atmosphere, I think, that a lot of cities have. So it's a very good place to work, very good place to be part of.
That sounds ideal. It reminds me somewhat of San Antonio. So many of our alums are here as judges and lawyers, since St. Mary's is the only law school in San Antonio. But if they're not alums, it sounds like with Drake too, and you're an example, because the school is the hometown law school, you still get lots of support from non-alums. So it makes it really great for students. Well, thanks for telling us a little bit about Drake. I know that part of the mission of Drake University School of Law is to teach law in action, and that's part of the reason for the development of the first-year trial practicum. And I learned about this because you were one of the 10 finalists in Bloomberg Law's inaugural Law School Innovation Program. We were fortunate to have St. Mary's online JD program recognized also, but having the first year trial practicum program recognized is really outstanding and inspired me to learn a little bit more about it. So, can you tell our listeners what students experience in that practicum?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great program. It's unique. No one else in the country does it. Um, what we do is we suspend the first year classes for a week, and bring a real trial to Drake University Law School. Drake has a stadium seated courtroom that has all the technology that you would use in a normal trial. And fortunately, the Polk County District Court judges are very familiar with it and very enthusiastic about bringing a real trial to the university. So the students, the first year students, are actually watching the trial start to finish, and they'll see, jury selection. They'll see opening statements. They'll see direct examination, cross examination, closing arguments, and then 99% of the time they'll get a chance to talk with the jurors after they've reached a verdict, which is truly kind of a unique experience for any lawyer. The program started about 25 years ago, so we've been doing this for quite a while.
Wow, that's a long time.
It is. It's always a little bit of a risk because trials settle. As we all know, that 80%
Yes.
of the trials settle. So no matter how we schedule things, there's always a little bit of hesitation and risk and doubt about, is this actually going to go to trial? But fortunately, we've got great support from the judges and great support from the prosecutor's office and the defense bar, for that matter. I think my biggest selling point is I always tell them, we give you free donuts. So that's always, I think, the biggest selling point.
Well, who wouldn't come for free donuts, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But anyway, it's truly a great experience for the students. Typically, what we'll do is they'll watch the trial for a morning, for instance, and then we'll break into smaller groups with another experienced lawyer that has sat in for that session. And the students get a chance to ask that lawyer questions about what they just saw. So it's a very much of a immediate feedback, immediate get your questions answered. Why did the lawyers do this? How did they, what were they trying to do? Why did the witness say that? So just tremendous opportunity to observe a trial and get that immediate feedback about kind of what's going on underneath what you see on TV. And so it's a very, I think, very educational program for the students. And what it does for the legal education, if you will, I think it brings those cases to life. It brings the action of, okay, what I read in the book actually happened to real people. And I can see the consequences in the Drake courtroom when if there's a guilty verdict, of them handcuffing the defendant and taking him off to custody. So there's a whole range of emotions that the students see, not only among the participants, but among themselves as well. There have been a lot of cases that have high emotions and high high priorities or high profile cases. And we've had murder cases there. We've had shaken baby cases there, although the term is abusive head trauma now. But so, I mean, there are very significant cases that have occurred in that courtroom, and the students have had an opportunity to witness those cases and see the participants, visit with the participants, visit with the judge that actually tries the case, and then, like I said, after the verdict, actually visit with the jurors and ask them, kind of, how did you perceive this? How did you feel about the experience? It's a tremendously, I think, valuable program for our students.
Well, it sounds fascinating. I have lots of questions. First, the idea that you might schedule this and then it settle. I mean, that is an actual probability, right? More than a probability, given how many cases settle. So, do you often have, like a backup as well? Do you pick the cases and then schedule the trial, or is it just a week of whatever that case is going to be that week? How does that work?
Yeah, we usually try to schedule the trial practicum during the week before spring break. So it kind of gives the students a break in their classes and a little less disruption to the regular classes as possible. And I think they really look forward to that timing as well. But so we try to do that, and then we try to find out what cases are scheduled for that week, and then try to figure out which ones are where the offer's been made, it's been rejected, and it looks like that's going to trial. And so we try to focus in on those cases. And yeah, certainly we try to have backup cases. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Last year, for that particular week, there were no trials that were going to go to trial. But a trial that was going to go a couple weeks later came to our attention, and the lawyers and the judge were all very willing to actually accelerate the trial date, move it up 2 weeks, and try to at Drake University rather than 2 weeks later down at the Polk County Courthouse. And so
That's great.
we were very fortunate to have that cooperation among the lawyers. And I think that's part of what, like I was telling you earlier about the community with the law school and the ability to kind of get that cooperation. There's always some trepidation among particularly defense lawyers about trying a case in front of 100 students.
Yes.
And so sometimes it takes a little talking them into what that experience is, and they're a little worried that their client may not get a fair trial. But I think over the years, we've demonstrated that you do get a very fair trial at Drake, that, pretty soon, as soon as they start the trial, the lawyers and the participants pretty much forget about the students. They're just kind of in the background, and they focus on trying their case. And the students obviously are very interested in the trials, but the lawyers, I think, are very quickly very comfortable. And I think they enjoy that atmosphere. Most trial lawyers, I think, like a little bit of attention, and so they like
Sure. The more
crowd.
audience, the better, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Do you prep the students at all before that week? So if you know, for instance, there's going to be a murder case, do you give them any sort of a primer before they watch the case?
Yeah, absolutely. We meet with them the Friday before the trial starts and kind of runs through the rules for them. And let them know that, if there's going to be some graphic photographs or graphic testimony, that's going to happen. And we're going to try and give them a heads up. So if somebody doesn't feel comfortable sitting in on the trial, then they can, excuse themselves or not come for that session. But so we typically do that. We let them know that, they are there as participants, that are as witnesses, but they are absolutely not to make any response or do anything that would somehow jeopardize the trial, or no laughing at anything. They are strictly there as spectators, and they need to obviously be on their best behavior. And I think over the years they fit right into that role. I don't remember that we've ever had any kind of issue with the fact that the students were sitting there or they were disruptive or anything else. I think they've always been very respectful, and like you said, I think generally that it's a great part of their legal education. And I think most of the students, even years afterwards, talk about the case they saw in the trial practicum, and so it really is kind of a special deal.
And are the students prohibited from discussing the case during that week out in the community? Are there concerns about, interactions with the jurors, even inadvertently?
Yeah, the only requirement we have as far as who they can't discuss the case with is the jurors. And we try to isolate the jurors as best we can. We have a whole kind of wing on our clinic building where we keep the jurors. And the jurors understand that. They're to go right up to the second floor where they have no contact with any of the students or any of the witnesses or the lawyers. We tell the students not to converse with the lawyers during the trial unless that lawyer wants to go ahead and talk with them. Because the lawyers have a job to do, they need to be focused on their trial. So, after the case is over, the lawyers are more than happy to talk with them. And even some lawyers are willing to during the trial. They like that distraction, if you will. But the students are given the instruction, don't talk with any of the lawyers or the participants during the trial. We typically have lunch with the judge during the trial. So there'll be like 25 students that get a chance to have lunch with the judge. And they talk a little bit
Outstanding.
they talk a little bit about the, the case as it's progressing. The judge actually can't get into too much of the details about the trial of the case, but they talk about the procedures and, kind of other things that are going on in the legal community. So it's a great opportunity to meet the bench and the lawyers even, and get them, get excited about that part of the business.
So the trial goes on, the students are excited and professional and just observers. They get a chance to talk to some of the jurors, the judge, the lawyers involved in the case, generally after verdict. Is there any more reflection that the students do formally with Drake? Do they have to do a paper, or are there further discussions with you all, or does any of their first year courses pick up on what happened in the trial?
Generally not. Sometimes we'll do a survey just to kind of get the impressions of the students, and if there's anything in particular that happened, then we might follow up with that. Typically, there's going to be some downtime during the trial. For instance, Thursday afternoon, if they're going to do closings on Friday, the lawyers are working on the judges are working on the instructions. So there may be some downtime there. And during that time, we try to schedule some other programming, if you will. Sometimes we'll do implicit discriminate or implicit bias training. We'll do, we've had a case a year or two ago where one of the defendants was a Des Moines Register reporter who was arrested during the Black Lives Matter protests. And that received basically worldwide attention. And the trial was live streamed throughout the world. And we had, people from, I think 8 or 9 different countries that watched the trial. And it was, very high profile, very much picking back up on those protests that happened a year earlier. But during that downtime, we had a panel of media experts, some people that worked at the local media. We had a former prosecutor. We had people associated with the groups that were involved. We had somebody from Black Lives Matter there. And so it was a great panel discussion for the students to not only see some of the main issues of the day, but also to talk about it and understand kind of what was going on from each perspective. And so it was, I think, a really valuable experience. So we try to do kind of where we can fit it in during the course of the trial. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're not interfering with the trial, and that would be precedent. But it does offer a great opportunity to kind of piggyback what the students are seeing in that courtroom.
That's really exciting that you were able to have the trial be one that was receiving such significant national and international attention. As far as the first year trial practicum program, I know you're the director now, but you've had some other experiences wearing some different hats. Please tell us about that.
Sure. Yep. As a prosecutor, I tried 2 cases there. One was abusive head trauma to a little 2-year-old. And one of the significant things about that case was that we used a computer animation to show how the injuries occurred, the mechanism behind the injuries. So we had a local expert medical physician that would told us, basically looked at the video and said, yes, this is the mechanism behind that type of an injury. and that was played for the jury as well as the students. And that later became one of the leading cases in Iowa about demonstrative evidence using computer animations. So the students got a chance to follow not only the trial itself and then the appeal from the trial, but also how the law developed as a result of using that computer animation. And another case I tried was a vehicular homicide case. So there are, like you said, a significant number of cases that are tried there that have some weight to them, if you will, or that are very serious cases. The kind of interesting thing about that case is I tried that with another prosecutor from our office who later became a judge and who later sat in as presiding judge in several of the trial practicum cases. So he not only got to participate as a lawyer, but also got a chance to participate as a judge presiding over the trial practicum. And he was a Drake student, so he actually got to watch a trial as a
Oh
student,
my goodness.
try a case as a lawyer, and then preside over a case as a judge.
If only he had also been a juror, but I guess that's not gonna happen now.
Yeah,
Uh,
that could still happen, I guess.
and do you, as someone who has argued cases in this trial practicum environment, um, was it any different for you?
No, not really. I mean, like you said, I think you're aware that the students are back there, but once you get focused on the case, your whole attention is the witnesses and the jury, and you're trying to prepare your case and do your case exactly the same way. I think the jurors are very similar. They're very focused on what's going on, probably more focused than they are at the Polk County Courthouse, because if there was just an empty courtroom, but they know they've got 100 law students watching the trial, and they are very focused on what happens in that trial. So I think that's another selling point to the lawyers is that you've got a jury that truly pays attention and really wants to make sure they get it right. But an interesting thing sometimes, that abusive head trauma case I tried, we had students showing up at 7 o'clock in the morning for a 9 o'clock start, just to make sure they got front row seats in the courtroom so they could see everything and kind of be more part of everything.
Wow.
And yeah, they come into the courtroom and I'm like, what are you doing here? Start for another 2 hours. And they're like, we want to get great seats. So, I mean, it just shows you kind of a level of excitement that program generates.
Absolutely. And it keeps students in the whole week before that spring break. I bet nobody leaves early.
That's true. That's true. Most of them are very excited about being there, and they want to see the verdict. They want to see what happens. They want to see the closings.
Yeah.
We had one murder case that the state and the defendant reached a deal halfway through the trial. And I kept telling them they can't do the deal until after closings, but that didn't stop them. But anyway, so they worked out a deal, and the defendant wound up pleading guilty to some lesser charges during the course of the trial practice. So they didn't get a chance to see closings, but they did get a chance to see kind of how very many trials work out and how they kind of are resolved, and the negotiations, how they go on between the lawyers, even through the course of the trial. So even though they didn't get to see closings, they did get a chance to see the process work.
Yes, extremely valuable to see that as well. Um, so what I usually do with my guests, or what I always do with my guests before we conclude, is ask them about the future of legal education. And I would love to know what you predict will happen with legal education over the coming decade, how it's likely to evolve. But then if you have any thoughts that are different than how it's likely going to evolve, how it should evolve that might be different, we'd love to hear them.
Sure. I think one thing, you mentioned this earlier, and I think it's been kind of a tagline for Drake, is the law in action. And as a result of our position in the capital city, we do have a significant number of internships and externships, and I think those are great programs as well. We've had students with the Polk County Attorney's Office try real jury trials. In fact, several of our students have wound up trying cases at the Drake Trial Practicum as
Oh my goodness.
interns. Yeah, so
Wow.
they're appearing as students uh, in front of their peers, and so they've done just a great job. But yeah, we've had some students graduate from Drake Law School having tried 5 felony jury trials where they've actually done the voir dire, done the opening, done the witnesses. It's a truly amazing experience, and I think we try to get more and more of those experiences for our students because the more they're comfortable doing in law school, when they've got a mentor, they've got someone uh, working with them to show them the ropes and show them how it works and that they can do it. You know, a lot of it is just the confidence of, yes, you can do this. And so I think the law in action part is an integral part of Drake's University's law school's uh, mission in order to try and get the students to feel comfortable in whatever role they're in. As far as kind of one thing that I think would make sense in terms of furthering legal education is I think there needs to be some more specialization, if you will, both in terms of the education itself and as far as the testing. And I kind of liken it to the what they do in medical school, where you go through a general course of study, but then if you want to practice in a certain area, you've got to specialize in that area and pass a board, or an exam geared toward that specialization. And I just think the law is getting so specialized anymore that if you are, kind of in general practice taking criminal cases, contract cases, wills and trusts, you're probably committing malpractice somewhere along the line. I think you're far better off specializing in a certain area. I mean, my specialty obviously was criminal law, and even focusing on that, you still had to spend a ton of time trying to keep up with the court decisions, the changes in the law, and was I'm not sure I could do any other type of law in a competent way. So I think that it'd be really nice to kind of see maybe you just need a general education or a general graduation from law school. But then if you want to practice in a particular area, you've got to specialize in that area and pass that kind of a board or an exam geared toward criminal law or obviously now there's going to be a great focus on technology and how that affects the tech companies and the law surrounding, all that intellectual property. And I think that's going to be a huge new area in the law that really needs to be addressed.
Yes, I think right now we could probably put into Chat GPT, what should a future law school education look like? And
Yeah.
I'll get some pretty good ideas.
Yeah.
I was wondering, since your cases for the trial practicum are criminal, and this gets a lot of enthusiasm among the students and watching this experience, do you find that your students skew towards wanting to be criminal attorneys as a result of this experience?
Yeah, we are two things. We most of the cases are criminal just because they go to trial more. But we have had civil cases there. We've had sex offender cases where they're committed to an institution, and the state has to prove that they have to stay there as a civil commitment. So we've had a variety of different kinds of cases, but obviously criminal cases are the bulk of what we see simply because they're going to trial more. Um, and it's hard to say. I think some students will tell you that there's nothing more that they want to do after watching one of those trials than to be down there in the arena, if you will. And that certainly happened to one of our students who watched a trial her first year and did an internship at the county attorney's office her second year and wound up trying the case. And her thought was, while she was sitting there watching the trial practicum, she said she'd just love to be sitting down there next to the woman that was trying the case. And the next year she was. So it was kind of a great tribute to her uh, desire as well as her working hard to get there, but also the program itself that gave her the opportunity to do that. But yeah, some lawyers or some law students want to do that. Others are like, this was great, but that's not for me. I'm not a trial lawyer. And so they're
Yeah,
more than happy to go back and review contracts or draft wills or whatever.
gotcha. But at least they've had that experience so they can make that decision. That's a lot of what we do in legal education, right? Exposing them to what they might enjoy and what they might not.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, again, congratulations on the selection of the first year trial practicum program as one of Bloomberg Law's inaugural innovation programs in law schools. And thank you for being with us today. Um, if you want to hear more from legal educators about the future of legal education, then I encourage you to listen to the Aspen Leading Edge podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, or Amazon. And thank you so much, Steve, for joining us.
Thank you. And congratulations to St. Mary's as well. So I think it's a great program that Bloomberg is doing. And, it's fun to be recognized, but it's also good to see and interesting to see other programs and what we could do in our law school.
Absolutely.